Welcome, Age of Vintage Society. It's hard to look at Tuesday Weld's career without feeling a tiny pang of regret for what could have been. She began acting when she was a child and progressed to mature roles in the late 1950s. One of the screen's great beauties as well as one of its great talents, she had the potential to be a star of the magnitude not seen since the studio days of the early 20th century. Why Tuesday Weld had a nervous breakdown at 9. Make sure to watch the video until the end and leave your thoughts in the comments. If you are new here, join our wonderful community by subscribing to the Age of Vintage channel. The child model turned sex kitten turned great actress, an Oscar nominee for Looking for Mr. Goodbar, has always had a tangled relationship with fame. Tuesday Weld never wanted to be a huge star, which is just as well, for her choice of movie roles was self-destructive. She's said through the years that she likes being a cult who people always try to rescue from awful films. She was comfortable in that legendary position because even if you don't work, your cult still glows. From the time she first entered America's consciousness in the 50s sitcom The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, it was obvious that Weld was different from the Sandra Dees of the world, and not just because of her improbable first name. Weld's apple pie looks hid a dark, dangerous undercurrent. In her characters, sex and emotions were inevitably linked. Her persona was innocent yet immoral, a femme fatale. Weld was Kubrick's first choice for Lolita, but she turned him down, later claiming, "I didn't have to play it, I was Lolita." Weld became the fantasy of millions of teenage boys overnight. Her fame soon eclipsed the show, and she left to pursue a film career. Weld's mother chose high-paying pin-up roles for her daughter in B-movies, like Sex Kittens Go to College, and her celebrity continued to grow, mostly due to the publicity her wild behaviour received. Columnist Luella Parsons labelled her a disgrace to Hollywood. She is as famous for what she could have been as for what she was. In addition to Lolita, Weld was first choice for the lead female parts in Bonnie and Clyde, Rosemary's Baby, Bob and Carol and Ted and Alice, Cactus Flower and True Grit, turning them all down. Critics at the time accused her of exercising poor judgment, but according to Weld herself, the real reason for her choices was more complicated. "Do you think I want success?" she said in a 1971 New York Times interview. "I refused Bonnie and Clyde because I was nursing at the time, but also because deep down I knew it was going to be a huge success. The same was true for Bob and Carol and Fred and Sue, or whatever it was called. It reeked of success." Despite her pin-up origins, Weld has shown herself to be one of the most singular film acting talents of the last 50 years. Tuesday Weld's genius is that she never seems to be acting. She always looks like she is simply that way, whether the film be Sex Kittens Go to College or Sergio Leone's epic Once Upon a Time in America. There was a special intensity about her, a kind of rawness, something very vulnerable and even fragile about her acting. I suspect that it reflected something of herself. For perfectly understandable and justifiable reasons, she turned down starring roles in a string of major pictures that would have secured for her that position, instead choosing to pursue a more modest path. To clarify, her existing body of work is extremely impressive. I am merely saying it might have been blinding in the magnitude of its dazzle. Back in the day, actors and the power players at Hollywood studios would change names quicker than you could say Maurice Micklewhite. Morris is better known as Michael Caine. Issa Dembski became Kirk Douglas. Joan Crawford spent her formative years as Lucille Lasser, and little Audrey Hepburn was christened Edda Kathleen Van Heemstra Hepburn Rushton. Tuesday Weld was one such nominative confection. She was born Susan Kerr Weld in New York on August 27, 1943. Her mother, Eileen Kerr Weld, was the fourth wife of Lathrop Motley Weld, a former investment broker and playboy who was the black sheep of his rich and socially distinguished family. His death of a heart ailment when Tuesday was only 3 marked the beginning of her career in the spotlight, as her mother pressed the little girl into modelling in order to support the family, which included an older brother and sister. They barely survived in a $20 a month apartment without hot water in a Manhattan slum, but Eileen Weld refused to accept her in-laws' offer to raise and educate the children because the deal hinged on her never seeing them again. A preternaturally beautiful child, Tuesday was put to work as a model by her mother to make ends meet. And meet they did, thanks to a parent who was part showbiz mum cliché and cautionary tale. Tuesday later said, "I became the supporter of the family, and I had to take my father's place in many, many ways. I was expected to make up for everything that had ever gone wrong in Mama's life. She became obsessed with me, pouring out her pent-up love, her alleged love, on me. And it's been heavy on my shoulders ever since. Mama still thinks I owe everything to her." As an elderly woman, Yosine was forced to supplement her income by babysitting for various celebrities in Hollywood, much to the chagrin and embarrassment of her daughter Tuesday. She lived alone in Los Angeles while her daughter refused to support or help her out. Tuesday continued the verbal mental abuse towards her mother until her dying day. She once told an interviewer that her mum was dead, though she wasn't at the time. As for Tuesday's side of the story, she said she had a breakdown at 9, started boozing at 10, and attempted suicide at 12, none of which seemed to get the right response from Mama. Then again, Tuesday often spun fanciful tales in interviews, not wanting to reveal too much of herself. Then again, her Mama helped create her. After her nervous breakdown, the family's move to Fort Lauderdale, Florida, gave Weld the rare opportunity to attend public school on a regular basis, as her schedule in New York had allowed only her nominal enrollment in several city schools. She was still far from having a normal childhood, however, as she developed a drinking problem. "When I was 9, I had a breakdown," Weld recalled, "which disappointed Mama a great deal, but I made a comeback when I was 10. Increased financial need caused Weld and her mother to return to New York after only 2 years in Florida, where Aileen left her other children in the care of friends. While still modelling, Weld began acting and dance lessons, and quickly accumulated a number of television roles on such shows as Playhouse 90, Craft Theatre, Alcoa Theatre, and Climax. Her acting success did little to assuage the pain she felt, however, and at 12 she made the first of several suicide attempts by ingesting a potentially lethal combination of alcohol, sleeping pills, and aspirin. She emerged from the resultant coma as wild as ever, routinely skipping school to get drunk in Greenwich Village. Weld moved from modelling to acting, and from New York to Los Angeles. Her break into films occurred at age 13 in 1956 low-budget Rock. Her part, described by a critic in Time magazine as the archetypical nymphette, Shirley Temple Black with a leer, was to be the first of many such roles she would play in her acting career, and the image for which she would become best known. Unable to gain admittance to New York's Actors Studio because of her age, Weld went with her mother to Hollywood, and in 1958 landed the role of the sexy young babysitter in the Paul Newman-Joan Woodward vehicle rally Round the Flag Boys, her first feature film. The following year she legally changed her first name to Tuesday, a childhood nickname, and played the crippled daughter of Danny Kaye in The Five Pennies. This led to a featured role in the popular television series The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis, as Talia Meninger, one of the title character's girlfriends. Within a few years, 20th Century Fox was marketing a 14-year-old Weld as the next Marilyn Monroe, with their publicity department cooking up quotes like, "I never wear underwear, it's much warmer with nothing on," and Weld's mother described her daughter in a newspaper interview as "tawny blonde all over." She moved out of her mother's house at age 16, but compelled by California's strict child labour laws to remain in school until she was 18, attended the Hollywood Professional School when she was not working. Her stint on Dobie Gillis proved short, for in 1960 she was dropped because a sponsor thought her teenage sex appeal inappropriate for a family show. Undaunted by this setback, Weld found that her image was in demand on the big screen, and during the early 1960s starred in a series of movies, most of them forgettable, some truly awful, that exploited this quality. In each, Weld played the part of a mindless teeny bopper, troubled teenager, or luscious nymph, commanding $35,000 per film. Hailed as the successor to Marilyn Monroe, whose career was then in its final tailspin. She dated men 3 times her age, drank heavily, smoked pot, and was surly and difficult with reporters, once appearing on a daytime talk show in a bathrobe and bare feet. Sam Shepard later wrote of the incident, "I fell in love with Tuesday Weld on that show. I thought she was the Marlon Brando of women." Weld attracted a torrent of media attention for her off-screen scandals, which included affairs with some of Hollywood's biggest names, among them Frank Sinatra, Raymond Burr, Albert Finney, John Ireland, George Hamilton, Elvis Presley, and John Barrymore Jr. Weld flaunted her sex life and further scandalized the press by making no secret of her fondness for liquor and showing up for interviews barefoot. Such behaviour would seem almost commonplace by the end of the decade, but in the conservative early 1960s she was vilified by gossip columnists for adding to the moral decay of Hollywood. Because of the poor quality of the movies she appeared in, Weld's film career had attracted almost no critical attention, but in the years following she began to earn a reputation as an actress of surprising range. Gradually she began to take control of her own career. Now 18, she was bequeathed a sizable inheritance from her paternal grandmother. With the pressure to provide taken off, Weld began to choose more idiosyncratic roles, sticking a knife into her sexbot image in Lord Love-a-Duck. She possessed a knack for elevating even the most typecast roles, such as her shallow high school beauty, whose every wish is granted, causing one reviewer to remark, "Weld is not only sexy but eloquent in what she doesn't say with words." Despite her talent, box office success eluded Weld. In the 1960s, she passed on plum roles in major films. However, she had a significant cult following by the mid to late years of the decade, with Tuesday Weld film festivals springing up in Manhattan and other locations. The cult status of her celebrity allowed Weld to break out of her early Hollywood image to obtain more diverse roles, particularly in television movies, which became her primary vehicles from the mid-1970s onward. By 1970, Weld was 27 years old with a little girl of her own, and yet she was still playing a teenager in John Frankenheimer's I Walk the Line. During this time she was known more for her troubled marriage to actor Dudley Moore, whom she married in 1975 after the breakup of her first marriage in 1971, than for her acting. "I got a divorce, my car disintegrated, and my house burned down. There was absolutely nothing left." So when Frank Perry announced Weld as his first and only choice to star in a film adaptation of Joan Didion's play It As It Lays, for once she said yes. Weld plays Maria Wyeth, an ex-model and B actress who's been committed to a mental institution. Recalling the events leading to her breakdown, she paints a bleak picture of Hollywood as a scorched, amoral desert. She was finally officially recognised for her work and awarded Best Actress at the Venice Film Festival, though some critics still couldn't shake the image of Tuesday as Dobie Gillis's gal pal. Still, Weld had arrived as an adult actress, no longer limited by her Lolita image. She was ready to begin a new stage of her career, so of course she decided to take 5 years off from making theatrical movies. The 1980s saw even less of Weld, and in the 1990s, despite the respect that now greets her name, she acted in only 2 major films, Falling Down and Feeling Minnesota, in which she played a mother. Weld rejected mainstream stardom, instead choosing a thornier, more individual path. In the process, she created one of the most adventurous and rewarding bodies of work of any Hollywood actor of the era. "I may be self-destructive, but I like taking chances with movies," she said in a 1971 New York Times interview. "I like challenges. I think the Tuesday Weld cult is a very nice thing." If you liked this video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, subscribe if you are new here, and if you want to support my work, please visit my Patreon page. Now it is your turn. What do you think about the life and legacy of Tuesday Weld? It's a fascinating dark side of Hollywood stuff after all these years. I just wonder how Tuesday would feel today, now that Mama is gone and the cult still glows.